Hey all, I'm Fuzzy back with a full but mini build guide for the Charged Dash Raider I've been playing around with. What we're going to do is really just cover off how I've put this build together, why I put it together, and then we'll go over the gear, the gems, the skill tree, and then we'll finish with the pros and cons. Now, originally I got this idea by just randomly watching an extremely old video that showed up in my feed, I think by Engineering Eternity. The video was about 3 years old. And it was just for an off-meta Charged Dash Raider, and I thought the skill looked really fun. However, since then, there's obviously been massive buffs to buff health. We've had all the nerfs to the skill gems, so I knew that single target was going to be A, crap, and B, clunky due to the way Charged Dash works. But I started leveling up an explosive arrow character, I think it was, and by level 75, I was already bored of the skill, so I thought I'd just try something a bit different. So we looked at lots of different ways to build the character as a raider. But in the end, because it's a lightning gem, it actually was the best way to build it. Was very similar to the Lightning Strike Raider in terms of skill tree and support gems. The gearing's quite different, but actually it was quite handy because a lot of the gear I was able to just borrow from my Lightning Strike character instead of forking out multiple exalts for gear that I've then got to try and sell again when I finish with the character. So let's look at the gear first. So we'll start with the helmet, and for this we've simply gone a rare helmet with Charged Dash has +6 to radius for each wave's last damage area. This essentially gives us much more AoE for clearing, makes our explosions bigger, and just makes it so we don't have to go into packs multiple times to clear them. This helmet isn't particularly good. I just rolled a couple of essences on it and left it as it was because I hit some resistances, some strength that we need, and an okay life roll. Now moving on to the amulet. Here we're using a replica Hiri's Truth. We're anointing Forces of Nature. The main reason we're using this is we get a level 22 hatred skill, and it also costs 50% less reservation. And what this allows us to do is add more auras into our build. It also comes with really good physical and cold damage to attacks, along with crit multiplier and some cold damage leached as life. Overall, considering I think this amulet's about 40-45 chaos, it's a really good item for us to use. For our 2 rings, we're using a taming, really just to get us again lots more damage, and more damage per freeze, shock, and ignite. I really don't know whether this is damage per chill, shock, and ignite. The wording seems a bit weird. I don't see why it would be 2 ailments and then a different type, but as it is, shock and ignite we can put on the enemy anyway because we're critting all the time. So we do a lot of damage with this ring. If you had a really, really good rolled rare, it'd probably be better, but I'd already spent quite a lot on the build and didn't want to put any more in. So we're going with Farrell's Fur for our armor. It is expensive, but the reason we've gone for this is because we really need permanent uptime on frenzy and power charges, especially when we're entering a boss arena. It's really hard to ramp this up because it just feels bad to start with. Because you're charging before you dash, your charge is really slow without frenzy charges and your damage is pretty poor without power charges. So Farrell's Fur solves that problem. Now we're not at the level I want to be yet. I think we're only level 90, so we still have another power node. Still have another power charge node to take, which will put the duration up so that we don't run out. Because you notice in the background that for 2 seconds, power charge disappears. Once we get the 4th power charge and the extra node that adds duration, that won't happen. We also get a lot of damage and defensive benefits from, obviously, aspect of the cat. For our gloves, this is really optional. I just didn't want to worry about curse on hit on a ring. So we've gone elemental weakness on hit with Hands of the High Templar. These, I think, were 2x. You don't have to go this way. There's plenty of different options. I just thought this was an easy sort of cheat option to go for. For gloves, we're going for Tailwind, but you don't really have to. It actually doesn't add a huge amount of DPS, but I just like the extra action speed. These are obviously quite expensive. I can't remember how much I paid for these. It was 5 or 6x. Just normal boots with life and resistances would be fine. You only lose about 5% DPS. For belt, I've not really bothered about it. I've just gone lots of life, resistances, and then strength and mana always help. Now for claw and shield, because I was really only testing to see if this build could work, I've just transferred over the claw and the shield from a Lightning Strike Raider. So this claw would work, but the better option would be massive amounts of physical damage, and then some melee pen, critical strike, and attack speed. But at the time I was building the character, the sort of claw that would make a difference to DPS was about 30x, and I wasn't going to pay it for a build that realistically I'm not going to play for that long. But if for whatever reason you decided this was a build you really, really wanted to play and you wanted to invest heavily in, you want a really, really heavy fizz damage claw, because we're using hatred, which scales off your physical damage, you'll get a lot more DPS that way. We also take some nodes on the tree that convert fizz to cold. So again, this would benefit that. You could even dual wield this. You don't have to go shield, but because we don't have a lot of life on this build anyway, I feel like you need to take a shield so you can get some life on the build. So again, it's just we need ailment avoidance somewhere so we get it on the shield, and then plus life. And if you can, max resistances, but it really doesn't matter that much. If we get a really tanky hit on this build at 4k life, we're probably going to die anyway. So that's the gear. In terms of flasks, really just bog standard flask, diamond flask, extra phasing for a quartz flask, got an Osiris promise for chaos res and lots of extra damage. You could also run, if you didn't want to run phasing, which doesn't do that much, to be fair, it's a bit of extra attack and spell dodge. You could run a taste of hate to get even more fizz as cold, which I think you would do if you had the physical claw. And that's the gear. In terms of unique gems, we're just running, again, a lethal pride jewel. It's not as good as the one I've got on Lightning Strike Raider, but it does give us some maximum life, and importantly, it gives us Intimidate on hit, which is a big damage increase. The full tree and cluster jewels is available in the path of building, but as I say, it's really, really similar to the Lightning Strike Raider tree. So we'll move on to the gem links that we use in the build. A lot of them are very similar to the Lightning Strike, just because it's a lightning skill, so it makes sense that the same support gems are going to be just as good. The only gem you could consider is Infused Channeling, which I took out because sometimes when you're going quickly through the map and we channel really quickly, you don't actually proc the bonus. Even when everything is proc, damage output isn't that much more, so I've just left it and gone with normal support gems. So we go increased critical strikes. I've gone for Awakened added lightning just because it's not particularly expensive. Obviously charge dash, we got a 2120 and that was 5 chaos I think. Nightblade support, Trinity, and then inspiration support. So for our auras, we get a level 22 hatred with the amulet anyway. And then we run an enlighten along with vitality, precision, and herald of ice. Because we've got 50% reduced reservation of hatred here, we can fit all these auras in and still have over 100 mana. Again, we're just doing a simple Immortal Call cast when damage taken setup with Blood Rage, which will have active all the time. Again, I've got my usual cast on Death and Portal, and then a Flame Dash because we are using Whirling Blades. Now in here we've got our Varl War Chief setup. Now this was before I've finished my tree, so we actually don't need the Culling Strike anymore because we already have that. They've just got faster attacks and Varl Ancestral War Chief. If you really wanted to use this skill for single target, you'd probably do multi-totems, War Chief, Ancestral Protector. So that gives you a massive damage boost on bosses, but I don't plan on using this skill for the big bosses, so I've not bothered with that. And then for our movement skill, we've got Whirling Blades, faster attacks, life tap, and fortify. The fortify duration isn't huge, it's like 4 or 5 seconds. I don't think you necessarily have to run with this because you're not always directly trying to go into packs because you're doing that with your charge dash. So you probably won't get much benefit from it. And because they've already said it's getting butchered next league for this type of interaction, I probably wouldn't even bother running it, but you can if you like. So we've gone through the gems. I'll just touch on Pantheons. I haven't bothered. I very rarely find that these do that much, and it really grinds me to have to do it over and over again on every character that I build. And as this character was really meant to just be played for a couple of days just to see what the skill could do, I've not bothered with any of the Pantheons at all since I picked them up when I was leveling. So we'll move on to the pros and cons of Charge Dash. The pros is it's actually really fun, and it is, when you get used to the skill, really, really quick to clear maps. Because we've got our helmet enchant, we actually get quite a lot of AoE, and you will find that even if there's rares in a pack, if you charge in there with at least 4 or 5 charges, you're going to obliterate the whole pack and you can move on. The gem itself is cheap. It's like 5 chaos for a 2120. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be much more expensive for a 2123. And it's just a different skill to play. The interaction is really different to any of the other skills that you play, and it is really satisfying when you fly pack to pack, just blowing them all up. In all honesty, no, that's probably the only pro, and there are plenty of cons, which we'll move on to now. So the first con is single target isn't great. I think we get between 1.5 to 2 million, which is ample to clear like map bosses in say 5 or 6 seconds. It can get conquerors down as well, but the actual mechanic of using charge dash is just so frustrating because you need to let go at some point, and when you let go of your charge, you're going to then fly off in the direction of your mouse pointer. There's also the issue that if you run out of mana, that'll automatically trigger the charge as well. So on a boss that might be phased like Sirus, If you're hitting him and he suddenly goes immune and you don't realize and you run out of charges, you're just going to dash straight through him and probably to your death. So because of that, I actually gem swap to Vol Lightning Strike, just that single gem, for Conquerors, Sirus, and any other Maven stuff that I might want to do. Because Charge Dash is a lightning skill, we use lightning support gems, we use lightning jewels like, lightning crit multi, that sort of thing. So it's an easy swap for Vol Lightning Strike. On this setup, it does probably 3 to 4 million DPS, so it's ample DPS to do most of the content in the game. The other con is, it's very expensive to get to this point. You could probably spend 3 to 4x on a build with a different skill and have it reach 1 to 2 million DPS. For this, we've got a Pharaoh's Fur, we've got a Claw that's probably 10x, we've got a Shield that's probably the same, boots are about 6x. It's just lots of expensive equipment to get it really good. Now, if you dropped these and just bought standard ones, you'd probably still have around 1 million DPS, but Conquerors would feel pretty bad, I think. Map bosses, again, with your map bosses, you want to get them down really quick, because if you have to start interacting loads of different times with the skill, it can get a bit out of control. You might dash when you don't mean to, and then it totally puts you off the encounter. So overall, I'm not going to take this skill any further. I just wanted to see if we could take it and get it so it comfortably clears maps. And it probably is actually slightly quicker to map than the Lightning Strike Raider, because you don't ever have to stop. Your movement skill is your attack skill. So all you do is you just charge dash around the whole map. And every time a pack turns up, you bump into it and you obliterate it. It's really, really quick. Map bosses are absolutely fine, go down really quick. It's just the next step up is where this build sort of falls apart, because charge dash is pretty awful for long single target encounters. That's it. Wrapping it up, because I don't plan on taking the skill any further. I just wanted to show some content that was a little bit different. Next video I've got planned is another one around, making currency in the league mechanic. Should be out in a couple of days, so look out for that. But until next time, take care and see you in the next video.